Welcome to the Fascist Roundtable. My name is Joshua Neuer. I'm the chairman of the American Blackshirt Party, and I'm also going to be your host today. On this show, we talk about current events, history, philosophy, and we bring these to you from a fascist angle. Joining me today is Anthony Drummond, Matthew Hine, and behind the scenes, and our good friend Kenny from Florida. First topic today, we're going to talk about an economic issue which has been affecting this country significantly for the last 20 to 30 years, and that's the topic of automation, the replacing of human labor by machines and technology. Right now in this country, we have an effective unemployment rate of about 20%. This is not the unemployment rate that's given to you by the government or economists. This is the unemployment rate using the statistics as they were used during the Great Depression. So we still have an economy which is basically the same as it was during the Great Depression, despite all these glorious statistics and numbers which are giving you 3-4% unemployment. That's drastically oversold. It's incorrect, and it leads to people misinterpreting how well things are actually doing. So automation plays a big role in this. I think first of all we have to state that we can't stop technology. We can't stop efficiency. If a company comes up with a more technological, more efficient way of doing business, that's not something the state or even labor organizations should prevent. Now, the question you have to ask is, are these innovations, are they actually helping to produce a better product or better services? Because something is more technological and more advanced doesn't mean that the end product is better. This has to do, a lot of this is, customer service related. Also, when you have machines replacing human individuals in a lot of these circumstances, they don't respond as well. They don't react as well to human customers. So it's something we got to really reach a balance with this. We can't say, yes, let's replace human individuals in all these circumstances. Let's get more technological, more proficient there, when the product itself is not coming out the same. The problem right now is that the state and labor organizations don't have the power to step in certain circumstances and say, hey, we're not going to let you replace our jobs just because you found a better way of doing business. The 100% discretion is up to the company, and sometimes it's for the best. Sometimes it's not. That's why a fascist government were to come in here and determine what is best for society and what's not. And so this is the position we have to take. And in a lot of cases, you have people who are that do become more technological, and as a result, their capital accumulation is allowed to increase, and their profits go up too. And in cases like this, there should be increased taxes upon these companies and redistribute that money so we can have worker training for these individuals to go into other industries. Also, we have a problem in this country where individuals are put into this mill, which is public schools right now, which trains them to be good workers, when a lot of us aren't. Some people are perfectly suited to work a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle or in an assembly line. That's fine. But a lot of people are not. A lot of people are more suited to be artistic, to be artists, to be musicians, to be writers. And right now, with the way the present economy is structured and the way schooling is structured, it takes them out of that role. They don't even get the opportunity to do that. And so what I'm proposing now would be a suitable alternative to this. A lot of these cases where these companies are making profits and just sitting on it, tax them more, use that money to retrain these people, use it to put them in jobs that they're more suited for, like something in the arts. And right now, the way present society is constructed, that's not possible. In fact, what we've seen recently, especially under President Trump and the Republicans, is a desire to reduce taxes on corporations and businesses to their absolute bare minimum. And this makes absolutely no sense, because corporate profits as they stand right now are at a 60-year high, and they're not reinvesting those in workers. They're not reinvesting them into product innovations and capital. They're investing those into dividends and giving them to shareholders. So we have to rethink. We have to give another outlook to automation. How does it fit within corporatism? How does it fit within a general society. We can't think of this as being something that's autonomous, that's separate from everything else. So we got to start rethinking this issue societal. What do you have to say on automation? What should be our policy in regards to this?
Well, I believe that we should take a more moderate stance on it. There's certain situations where I think automation would be healthy for the economy, but then there's also certain situations that it could go bad. It could make thousands of people lose their jobs. It could make thousands of people lose their jobs, and that's just from one technological breakthrough. For instance, I used to work at this one company. We sold vitamins. I'm not going to say the name of the company. Vitamin supplement company, and they had a production line which they filled and bottled everything. So there's this. There's about 20 people working up there in the production line, and the company decided to, out of nowhere, no warning at all, they decided to buy this machine that counted all the pills and stuff like that, and probably about half those people lost their jobs and got laid off. And it's sad. It was definitely sad to see. I didn't personally know a lot of those people well, but I don't know the overall economics of how a vitamin company would affect everything else. I'm sure there's other jobs elsewhere, and the company saved way more money on it, which it's a foreign-owned company. So, I mean, I really don't think that they should have done that. If they want to operate in the U.S., they got to be good for us. And another thing, I don't want to go into it. There's this machine made, and it's a company that I currently work for. There's a machine. They made a machine in the 50s. It had something to do with lumber and stuff, but there was probably hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, working in lumber mills around the entire world. Once this machine was made and developed throughout the 50s until now, it pretty much made a mill which would probably have to have 1,000 workers there. And think about how much mills there are around the entire world. It went from thousands of people to a mill just only having 3 operators and maintenance guys. And that's nuts. But it was a huge technological innovation, and it probably made a few people very, very rich, and possibly made people lose out on their jobs. So, yeah, that's all I really had to say about that. Just wanted to share the story, and let's see what else people have to say.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. Kenny, what do you have to say about the worker automation? What should be our policy in regards to that?
Well, our policy definitely should not be regressive in nature, but we shouldn't be jumping the gun in a sense on automation. This is a very sensitive topic now that we are advancing our technology forward as a society. We have to remember, we have to find a way to balance it. If we just advance for the sake of advancing, we run the risk of going too far too fast and not letting society catch up. And when we do this, we risk leaving so many of our people behind. And we cannot let our society and our businesses leave our people in the dust, in a sense, when it comes to technology. The more we automate, the more we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to give these people new work? Because we can't just let these people not work, and we're not going to go the route of communists and demand a command economy and force it the way we want it to go. And we're not going to keep on the current path where the market decides these things, and they're doing it not because it'll benefit us in the long run, but more so because it'll save them money. That's the goal. They're doing it for the bottom line more than anything. So we have to make sure that we are balancing that. And a fascist policy, a corporatist policy regarding that is, as I said, it's not regressive, but it's not jumping the gun. We're not going to hold back technology just because we're afraid of it, but we're not going to leap ahead and run the risk of being unable to keep up with it. We're going to make sure that you can balance progress with the actual ability of the state to manage our economy to the point where it won't just suddenly start putting everybody out of work. We'll have to start clearing out whole factories of people because we can automate it. And this is a problem that's only going to get worse with time. As automation continues to become more efficient, it becomes more prevalent. So we'll definitely have to, with time, ask ourselves more and more how we'll solve this. Honestly enough, I think a fascist approach will be the most, and a corporatist approach will be the most efficient way to go about it, because the current system won't care. It'll just keep going the way it's going, irregardless of any consequences that automation brings, and they'll just tell us to suck it up. And the alternative to that is not corporatism, is of course the communist route, which is a command economy demanding that we do things a certain way, and then ultimately hindering progress. So a fascist approach will be, in the long run, efficiency, but not to the detriment of the people.
Absolutely. It's about balancing competing interests, which is something our society and economy doesn't do now, but under corporatism and fascism would be the number one goal. What do you have to say on this issue?
Yeah, I have a couple things to say about this. First off, I do think, yeah, of course, we have to take a balanced approach to where it's not going to be regressive and cause our economy and leadership in the technological realm to hesitate and stop moving forward. We have to be the leader. We have to make sure our country is reaping the benefits of technology, but we have to do it in a smart way. If a company wants to automate and it's going to do more negative to society than it would do something positively, it probably should be a no-go, or there should be some type of consequences to that, such as maybe some type of automation tax or something. But then again, that has to be assessed by industry. If it's certain industries, like let's say in agriculture, where there's largely immigrants from other countries doing it, maybe that might be a good thing if we could somehow figure out how to automate that better, and that way maybe we could get some Americans in there getting paid higher, using new machines or new types of technology to harvest fruit and such things like that. But like for, let's say, a warehouse, for instance, if you completely automate a warehouse and take out all those workers, where are those people going to go? It has to be like that. How could we manage the labor force to a way where it's going to work out? Certain industries might be better off, like such as agriculture. They might be better off automating everything, but other industries, it might just really hurt the American worker and the American people, and not really balance the interests of our society. So really, we have to think deeply about it and try to figure out ways how to do it right without causing any harm to progression in an economic sense. Because we can't just kick a bunch of people out and put them out on the street with nowhere to go. Because ultimately, in a corporatist society, the state's going to have to try to find a way to relocate those workers into a different industry or to a different company or something like that. But that can't go, for lack of a better word, unpunished if a company does decide to do that and for pure profit, kick all their workers to the curb, leave them jobless, nowhere to go. Maybe they should find a way to relocate them and spend money. There should be some type of penalties to a specific company or group of individuals, purely out of the need for or the want for profit, not the need, to kick people to the curb and cause disruption in the labor force and disrupt people's lives, as a result. So it's a very important subject that I think people need to start talking about, and you really don't see it in the news or anything like that, or in politics. It's not an issue to anybody. It's not an issue to the Republicans because they want to make money. The Democrats don't really say much about it. So there has to be some type of balance there, and things need to be assessed, like what industries can handle this type of automation and what's going to happen to the workers after this happens. So it's something that everybody needs to think deeply about and put their heads together and figure out how to do it the right way and keep it from happening in our most important industries where a lot of Americans rely on that as their main source of income. And it's going to affect their lives. It's going to destroy people's lives if we don't figure out a way to stop that and regulate it and make sure that greedy people are not going to affect everybody else just because they want to get a little bit richer by making an investment on some type of machine that could do the job. And because really they're just trying to cut back on labor costs. Like the story Jesse said, where a mill would have hundreds of workers, and then after they came up with this advancement, then it'll be a 3-person operation. That probably disrupted a lot of people's lives, and maybe something should have been done about it, or maybe it should have been slowly introduced instead of just taking the world by storm and bam, thousands and thousands and thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs there. So I think it's a very important issue, and people need to think about it, and it's going to be central to a corporatist government to figure out how to cope with that and do it right and introduce it in the right way to where it's not going to disrupt everybody's lives and therefore be damaging to the American people.
Thank you, Anthony. Topic number 2 today, we're going to talk about the left. And in specific, I want to address a couple of different kinds of groups who have been in the news a lot recently, Antifa and anarchist groups. These are the groups you see on the street. They were fighting the white nationalists at Unite the Right. You see them in a lot of the clips of what's going on in Portland and in the Northwest, Berkeley, a lot of these places. Now, this has been a topic we have not addressed much at all, and that's because I know a lot of people here that are involved on social media, the internet, and you constantly see this stream of news and memes and stories regarding Antifa, and it becomes to a large extent obsessive. It paralyzes people. I know, especially after the original Unite the Right last year, there was just story after story, and it makes people become obsessed with it. They become fearful, and it controls them to a large extent. So it's a topic we have not really addressed a lot because a lot of this talk of Antifa has been overblown. They don't, with a few exceptions, they're not the 1-ton monster they're made out to be. But let me say this. There's now legislation in Congress which would basically cripple them. And so this is a topic now that it's a public issue. This is something to address. Now, when it comes to some of these groups, I get it. I mean, these are people, for the most part, young people who are disaffected, disenchanted, don't feel a part of society. So they lash out, they revolt. And that part I understand, because fascism to a large extent appeals to people who are not part of mainstream society. They're disenchanted also. So we as fascists have to put out a message which will appeal to a lot of these people who think they know fascism. They think it's something that it's not. So they join these groups on the left, which to a large extent help to buttress and build up this present liberal democratic capitalist society. They're tools of the establishment, and they don't even realize it. The true revolt, the true rebellion, is fascism. So I know we have to, which appeals to that, and get a hold of more people. Now, saying that, Antifa, when they're in the streets, when they protest, when they confront people, what your message is, there's a certain way you need to conduct yourself with dignity and pride. What I see out there in their behavior a lot of times is absolutely disgusting and absolutely revolting. The vulgarity they use, their attacks on innocent people, all around just their general behavior. So that absolutely needs to be condemned. And when you're committing violence against people like that and you're covering your faces, there's no possible justification for it. So I support legislation that's being proposed in Washington. Matt, what do you have to say in regards to this issue?
Well, I think that I think you really were very right when you said that a lot of these people are they are feeling like they're left out by modern society. They don't believe that modern mainstream society offers a true viable solution to social and economic issues that we face. But I think that by taking the Antifa or anarchist approach, I think that these people are making a hideous mistake or series of mistakes, and it's largely starts with the fact that they're protesting. Particularly, they like to protest against what they believe is as the Republican establishment. And I'm not here to defend Republicans by any stretch of the measure. I'm not here to defend them. They are certainly guilty of their own sins, but they're confusing and distorting. They believe that Republican equals white nationalist. They're out there protesting without actually understanding what it is that they're protesting, and then at the same time they take on this name. Many of them take on the name of Antifa, and they're not actually protesting genuine fascism. They're not even protesting against us because they don't understand that what we are and what it is that we're advocating for. So their protest is confused and distorted, and then they're not actually protesting the very thing that they say that they're protesting. And then to go down another issue to discuss another issue with them, it's sort of a roundabout path that we're going to have to take to cover this subject, but Antifa and anarchists are largely becoming obsessed with this notion of social justice, which is becoming ever increasingly twisted and wicked, to the point that they are advocating for these notions of pronoun awareness. You need to be sure to use the proper pronoun for a person. And this is in direct violation of the laws of nature and biology. But that's the point: is that they are so obsessed with resisting any notion of higher authority or law that they would challenge the laws of nature. They're also now advocating for it's not taken off in any sort of large, significant way yet, but I can see it on the horizon that they'll be advocating for such notions as, say, pedosexuality. Pedophilia won't be a crime anymore. It's pedosexuality. That love shouldn't be limited by gender or by age. But again, this all falls back to the notion that they're simply resistant to any concept of law or order that exists, that they would argue limits people's lives, but instead we would say it enhances a person's life. And this is just simply liberal democracy finally gone rotten. This is the result of what you see in a liberal society taken to an extreme. And finally, I want to discuss the fact that Antifa and anarchists, they are very contradictory in the fact that they reduce the human being to being nothing more than a member or a part of a racial or gender group. They may talk about ideas of respect for the individual in some instances, but in reality, they suppress the individual. Individuality has no true place in an anarchist society or social justice society. And that runs contrary to fascism. Now, we preserve and promote the role of the individual, and we do so in a proper context. The individual has his role in defending the greater good of society, but we believe and respect the notion of the individual. He has his place. He deserves respect, and we're much more. We're much more cognizant of the genuine nature of how an individual can participate in society and how he should participate in society than what Antifa or supporters or anarchists would advocate. So Antifa and anarchists are just riddled with contradictions and with issues that I think that once the American people really take the time to sit down and analyze it and understand it, I think that they'll largely turn away from these groups and reject their message.
Matt, Kenny, what's your opinion on this topic?
So in regards to Antifa and anarchists, overall, I mean, just in their actions, I mean, actions overall speak louder than words, more through and through. And for Antifa, anarchists, and their ilk, they're overall unreasonable. They often talk about how, like, the right is supposed to be basically all neo-Nazis, we're all Nazis, we're all white supremacists and whatnot. And it's just, it's funny because they pin us as the bad guys. Like, we have to be. We are the stereotypical cookie-cutter bad guys of this world. But it's funny because we have never employed violence, at least our party has never employed violence to get our message across. We don't have to. Our actions and our beliefs and ideology do not mean we have to. Our words and our actions will show that we don't need violence to achieve the ends, in a sense. We don't have to throw bottles at people or hit them with bike locks in some cases to get our point across. In that sense, they're hypocrites. They absolutely demonize us as the worst thing that's ever happened while embodying the violence that they say we are guilty of. And I think this is one of the biggest things, is that we need to fight this idea that they are fascists, because they are not. They are a significant thing in and of themselves. They are something totally separate than what we want to achieve, and what our goals are, and how we act. I mean, we had the meetup down here in Florida, and that was fantastic. It was great to meet new people, and just from that meeting, I could tell we are nothing like Antifa, anarchists, or anything like that. It's funny because their actions only further strengthen, like, white supremacist groups and whatnot. When they fight them, when they get in the streets with these people, they do nothing but cement the idea that they are right. And it makes it harder for not only us to deal with that, but the entire nation to deal with that. Antifa does nothing but cement those kinds of groups and give them strength, because it looks like that they're fighting the good fight. But overall, they are not fascists. We are fascists. And we are by far more ideologically set, and we have absolute purpose, in a sense. Versus, like you said, in a sense, Antifa is very unguided. A lot of it's just teen angst in some ways. In other ways, it's just the fact they have no identity, and that's the problem with what we have now, as in the liberal capitalist democracy we have now. It doesn't give them an identity. Versus the fascist nation that we want to establish gives the people an identity to stand by. And not just any identity. And it's not like forcing fake patriotism down their throat. It gives them real identity. It gives them something real they can stand by. A real action, real purpose. And I think that's ultimately how we'll in the end deal with it, is the fact that when they're in the streets, when Antifa and anarchists are in the streets, there is no debate. There is no talking them down. They're there for a fight. That's all they're there for. They're not there for a decent conversation over ideas or a nice disagreement about how to think. They're there to fight people. And that's all they want. And it's not even a uniform group of people. You have everybody from anarchists, communists, socialists, random university students who took ethics classes from a weirdo. those kinds of people end up in these groups, and they just form into these masses of violence and anger, and you can't talk with that. There's no way to have a conversation with those kinds of people. So in the end, the only way to deal with it is through legislation. It's to say, this is not okay. This is not how we're going to let our nation fall into just this absolute chaos of whenever something happens that they don't really like, they get in the streets, start burning people's cars and throwing things through windshields and whatnot. That's not how this is going to go. So I support the idea that we should legislate them. I feel we need to be careful about how we do so, not to let ourselves get so broad with how we handle civil disobedience or violence on the streets. In a sense, we don't want to become too overbearing to the point where we're catching anybody in the crosshairs of violence. But absolutely, in that kind of a group dealing with Antifa and their ilk, there's just no debate to be had. They're there for violence, they're there for fights, and they've shown that time and time again. So in the end, I feel like a fascist nation will help deal with this through policy, through ideology, and through legislation. We will deal with it in the sense we will give these people an identity that they can stand by, where they won't be floating around and pick up on any sort of neo-Marxist nonsense that floats into the universities, and we'll be able to give them something to truly stand by and have something to have pride in, so that we'll start thinning their ranks, not by having to beat them down or have them arrested, but rather giving them something real and giving them something better to stand by, to better themselves and their nation.
Thank you, Kenny. Anthony, I'm going to let you close out this topic. What do you have to say on this?
I think, so as you were saying earlier, these people are going to protest wearing masks, carrying weapons, and they're going there with an intent to assault people or to injure for political purposes. And I think that if anything could be labeled as a terrorist, that's definitely something that would fall into that category. If you're going to counter protest something and you're wearing masks and you're carrying a weapon, you're going there to assault, you're going there to hurt people. And that's just wrong. That's not the right way of doing it. Not only does it make them look bad, but it's crime. They're criminals. And so I do, of course, support that legislation against them. And in other words, another topic regarding this would be, I think that a lot of people fear them, and a lot of people make a big deal out of them when I don't think it's that serious, because I've lived in several parts of the United States, particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's supposedly a hub for them. And I never met one Antifa person or seen any of that. I know it happened in Berkeley and such things. They ship people in by bus, stuff like that. But really, it's just somebody with some money behind them paying some protesters to go commit terrorist acts and assault conservatives. And I'm not supporting conservatives. I'm not supporting them, but that's definitely something that's wrong. But I see a lot of people fearing them and questioning, hey, if we go out and hand out flyers or something, do you think that Antifa is, going to attack us? Oh, watch out for Antifa, this and that. I've never seen them, and I've been out there. We've been out there near San Francisco handing out flyers at a Democratic convention when all this was going on, right pre-Trump, right before his election when it was just announced and stuff like that. They actually had a anti-Trump protest the day before. We went the day after. Nothing. I wasn't fearing for my life. I didn't think anyone would attack me. I went there wearing a tie and acted very professional and just spoke to everybody I seen and handed them out flyers, and we tried to give them as much information as possible. We've been in downtown Denver, same thing. We had a lot more people, but again, we were dressed professionally. We were there to convey some information to people, and we weren't there to protest or ruin people's day or disrupt the functioning of the city. Such as like blocking streets off, or say we went there with masks and bats, obviously something bad is going to happen, but we didn't. We went there to act professional. We're not some kids sitting there trying to protest stuff they don't agree with. We're sitting there trying to be intelligent. And a lot of the things, any of those people from Antifa, their arguments, it's all going to be unintelligible. It's only violence. That's all they believe. They're anarchists. They believe in no rules in society, which that's going to be very bad. I think we all agree that if all the rules, everything was taken out of society, there could be no good. I mean, it's just going to be, a hole of chaos, essentially, and things aren't going to work right. Society isn't going to function. So I really do support that legislation. I think anyone who commits terrorist acts should be treated as so, and treated the same way as, any other terrorist would. I mean, of course, they're not like bombing people or anything, but they are attacking innocent people who aren't going there to harm people. They're going there just to make a statement, whatever. That's fine. But if you go there and cause a big scene and disrupt the entire city, assault people, you're breaking the law. So if you're breaking the law, maybe you should be thrown in jail. That's what I think, at least. I mean, I probably kind of have a hard line on when or when not you should be thrown in jail, but that's definitely something that does fall into that category. They're assaulting people. You assault someone, you should go to jail. That's just how it is. You can't just go around having no rules, doing whatever you want. And for the people, funding their deal or their organization, those people should definitely go to jail too. And I think they've identified some people that have contributed to that. And I don't really think anything major happened to them. They can go to jail. If you're paying someone to assault someone or disrupt how a city or an area is functioning, disrupting traffic, this and that, that's illegal and you should be punished. So I definitely agree with all of that. And I think that we all as American Blackshirts should support that. But then again, you have to keep in mind that do not dwell on that. Do not be afraid, because walking around in the street handing out flyers, you're not going to encounter anybody like that. I mean, I've been yelled at before by like some older person, and they called me a Democrat, which I'm far from. I'm far from a Republican too, but that's more like what you're going to see. You're not just going to get beat up by 6 guys with bats because you're handing out flyers at your local grocery store. It just doesn't make sense. It's an extreme fear, and people are feeding off of it because of the whole media frenzy on the incident. But in reality, you're going to see them walking down the street. It's just not going to happen, especially if you're not announcing it through the news, or it's not some highly publicized thing. If you're just going to operate by yourself or with a couple friends, you're good to go. We've never had any of our meetings crashed, anything like that. So I mean, that's what I think. They're not that big of a threat. They're not that big of a deal. But if you're committing crimes, you should go to jail. Something should happen about it. And I think that's what's going to happen through this legislation. And I fully support it.
Thank you, Anthony. We're going to move on now to our open round. And this is where each of us talk about a particular issue or an event, something going on in our hometown, and we give our own opinion on that. So it's something little something different. I'm going to start off. It came to my attention earlier this week that we were quoted in Madeleine Albright's new book about fascism. I want to give a brief response to this. First of all, I'm going to read you the section where she's talking about us, give you some little bit of context into what she's saying. Quote, at many levels, contempt has become a defining characteristic of American politics. It makes us unwilling to listen to what others say, unwilling in some cases even to allow them to speak. This stops the learning process cold and creates a ready-made audience for demagogues who know how to bring diverse groups of the aggrieved together in righteous opposition to everyone else. Consider this summons. The time has come for a movement that takes the best of the left and the right, forging a new unity amongst the various peoples who make up America. molding them into a single people, a united nation. Such is the benign rallying cry of a group calling itself the American Blackshirts. Now, the way I interpret this passage, criticism leveled at us, trying to portray us as demagogues, as not being sincere in our beliefs, front. So we can fool people into giving us power. To have this point of view, it takes a tremendous amount of, let's just say it like that, to ignore the hundreds of thousands of words we've put out within these last 6 years, an ideology, a philosophy based upon unity, a philosophy based upon their belief or identity which is subservient to the nation. We have tried very hard to create, and we have tons of material to back this up. And to believe that this is all just some facade, I don't know how to respond to that. That's absolutely absurd, absolutely ridiculous, and basically it's extremely lazy on our critics' part, or Madeleine Albright. Exact same criticism from all of them. It doesn't say really anything about us, but it says a ton what they believe and where they're coming from. It says a lot about them. What are you going to talk about today?
Yeah, I want to touch up on that subject. One of the former secretaries of states, they criticize us, pretty much calling us demagogues, which my answer to that is, how are we demagogues? How could a demagogue call us demagogues? She's the current system today. All those politicians, they just tell people what they want to hear. We're not telling people what they want to hear. And the reason I joined this movement is because I'm sick of that. All they do is talk and talk and talk, and nothing gets done. Nothing gets better. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. Now, to hear that from somebody who I consider a demagogue, it's just preposterous. I can't believe that, you know? And another thing I want to do, I'm going to touch up a little bit on automation. It's kind of a question for any of you guys who want to answer. I'm pretty sure after hearing the podcast, some of our listeners would want to get this question answered. I don't believe I'm the best person to answer this question, so I'll try to explain some parts as much as possible. But corporatism and automation, how will I understand that specific industries will be represented properly by the workers and by the owners, and they will both be given even power for that industry. How will they vote? Say there's another machine that they want to do that may have some people lose their jobs and also may make productivity very good. How will they vote on that? How would that certain industry implement that? How would they discuss it? How would they make it happen? Say both the workers and the owners want it to happen. How would that go on? I'm pretty sure on both sides there would be people against it, people for it, against it. I just want to see if anyone could answer that question. How will that specific industry in the corporate state make a decision on that, and when will the state step in?
Ideal solution. You have representatives from labor and you have representatives from ownership get together, and they decide what's going to happen. Now, when there's a deadlock, which going by history, we go back to fascist Italy, there will be at times. There's no doubt about that. So you need a neutral third party to decide what's going to happen there. And that neutral third party would be the state, because the state, a particular interest it's going to represent at the other's expense. It's not on the side of ownership. It's not on the side of labor. It's on the side of both. It wants a solution which is good for society in general. So when these two sides get together and they cannot agree, then the state is going to be the arbiter and get in there and decide what's going to happen. And it's also important to remember that when these industries become more automated, their profit margins are going to go way high. So there's going to be a lot more capital available for worker retraining, and to put some of these workers in specifically in industries that they might be more suited for. I think this kind of opposition to automation will be so entrenched as what we imagine, because we're viewing this through the lenses of a society which is adversarial, which has workers and it has management, and they view them as opposite ends of a spectrum, always competing against each other, one always trying to get up on the other. But the way society is going to be configured in fascism and corporatism is one based on cooperation, both sides working together. So, I mean, while there is going to be disagreement, I don't think it's going to be as extreme as what we imagine it to be.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a very interesting and unique perspective on how we would manage that and control and regulate the expansion of automation. It's definitely a unique perspective that hasn't ever really been tried full force in a large industrialized nation such as the United States of America. For just the idea of all parties sort of, not sort of, but actually having an equal say and having that neutral party of the state to intervene when necessary. It's very interesting, and it's something that sounds like it would definitely work. Like here in the United States, as Joshua said, it's an adversarial society. The workers are against the owners are against the workers, and the state just sits there and watches everything happen. In corporatism, that's not going to be the case. The state is specifically designed to make sure that a decision is made and a neutral decision is made, some type of mid-ground found to where things will work and people won't be oppressed, people won't lose their jobs. And if an industry is going to be automated, they'll, of course, be retrained. These companies will have a very high profit margin, and I mentioned some type of automation tax that could definitely be put directly to retraining employees who lost their jobs and put them in an industry where they could succeed and thrive and have a good life and make a livable wage. It just makes sense, and really there's no argument against it. I'd really like to hear a Republican or a mainline Democrat argue against that. And in fact, I think a lot of like your average voter Democrat, not like your elitist Democrat or your Antifa Democrat, they're going to agree with something like that. And just if they hear it and they shut their mouths and soak up the knowledge and understand corporatism, what it really is, and not just be scared away by the word corporation in there, they're going to agree with it. I think the average citizen will definitely agree with corporatism, and that's one of the most interesting things about our movement is we are concentrating on the corporate state, and we're not concentrating on any of the other ideas that people perceive as fascist or it's a smart way of doing it. It's very intelligent, new way of running a government and running a society that may very well work a lot better than what we have here, because what we have here isn't the best, and everybody could agree with that. And what there is in other countries and what's existing today obviously isn't working, because a lot of these countries that are even differing from us or opposite from us as far as how they run their government and society, they're not working out very well, or they're not succeeding any better than we are. They're doing worse, they're doing better. But just think about it. You give this a try. you give it a shot, you test it in full force. I think it's something that's definitely going to work. I don't think I know it's something that's definitely going to work, because there's almost no argument against it. Nobody could say that's bad, because it's a very good idea, and it's a good way to make sure society is functioning correctly and nobody is oppressed, and people aren't losing their jobs, or businesses aren't businesses could be oppressed by the workers in some cases. It's possible. It happens. But things have to be done, and it just has to be tested, and people have to give it a chance and have an open ear and just figure it out.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Matthew Hines, what is your particular point of interest this week?
Well, I want to kind of send a message out to the people that are listening in, to people that aren't necessarily, that they're not members of our party, and they're not members of say like an Antifa or anarchist, to people who haven't really made up their minds, who haven't decided on where exactly it is that they stand, to people that are still contemplating and trying to decide on what it is that they truly believe in and what it is that they truly want to stand for. I would like to say this, that if you speak with us, if you talk with a member of this party, I think you're going to find that to your delightful surprise, I think that we're not going to shy away from the hard topics of discussion. We're not going to avoid discussing an issue because we think that it might be too prickly. It might be too difficult to try to discuss. We're not going to try to talk away some issue where we understand, what the reality is of the history of our ideology. We would like to also emphasize, to remember that there are moments in the history of other ideologies in which the advocates for those ideologies, they're not necessarily proud of. But I think that this is truly, honestly, the only group, the only movement where you're going to hear us say, you know what? Yeah, there have been mistakes that have been made in our past. There have been things done that we shouldn't be proud of, things that have been done that we believe are wrong. But I'd like to hear a Republican discuss Iran-Contra. I'd like to hear Democrats discuss internment of first and second generation immigrant Americans during World War II. I'd like to hear Marxists, socialists, communists, anyone from that perspective try to explain away the history of crimes that have been committed in the name of that ideology. Because I don't necessarily think that people that subscribe to those strains of thought would be brave enough, would be bold enough to admit, yeah, you know what, that was wrong. That those events are reprehensible. So if you're out there and you're still trying to make up your mind on where exactly it is that you want to stand, what it is that you want to stand for, I definitely think you need to take a look at us and look at what it is that we have to say, because you'll never find someone with the courage and the boldness, I think, that you would find in the American Blackshirt Party. I don't think that you would find someone with the dignity and the appreciation for the sense of honor that you would find in a fascist. I think that we stand above and beyond virtually any other political ideology or perspective.
Very well said,
Agreed.
Matt. Very well said.
Yeah, I just got one more thing to say. I've been watching kind of our Facebook community and the Discord and stuff like that. And I know we got a lot of like new young guys coming in. Recruitment has been amazing. There's a lot of new faces here. Some people that I don't even know or I haven't even met or interacted with. But I have seen several posts. And one thing I see amongst young people is that they use a lot of like bad language, F words, stuff like that. When we're in a political community, one thing I have to say is how we've always thought of ourselves as American Blackshirts. We need to stand out by being more professional. Not in ways like if you're interacting with people and trying to recruit someone or educate them about fascism, corporatism, and all of the above. You're not going to sit there and cuss and use offensive language, anything hateful or anything that's not professional. The one thing I like is that out of all the people who the fascist community or so-called fascist community, we have always been professional. In these podcasts, we do not use bad language. We do not be a bad influence to people. We're not influencing you to think negatively. We're influencing you to think positively and conduct yourself in a professional and positive way. And just one thing I want to say to a lot of the people is just, conduct yourself professionally. Don't make yourself look bad. Make yourself look good. If you're going to a job, if you're talking to one of your friends about fascism or somebody who you met that might be interested, treat it like that as a job interview. You want them to see how a fascist should conduct themselves in public. It's cool. You're drinking with friends, use a couple cuss words, whatever. But in any sort of political or professional environment, you should definitely conduct yourself like a grown person. Do not cuss in the community. Do not, just avoid that. It's unnecessary, especially if it's in writing. You could definitely catch yourself doing that. If you're speaking, it's one thing. If something slips out, you're having fun, this and that. But if you're sitting there texting, reread it, just like you do spell check and stuff like that. You see a bad word in there that you may have accidentally written, or I don't know how you would do that, but just don't do it. We want new people coming in the community to see us being professional, and we want to be role models for how people should act, and that's just something that's going out to the new members. And I've seen some of that in some of our communities and social pages where people interact with each other and such. We're all grown here, and we're trying to take this very seriously. So let's do that. It's definitely something that's very good, and it's something we've had going for a very long time, and it's something that I'd like to see continue.
And let's close this round out with, what is your topic for today?
Real quick, I wanted to actually retouch on what Matthew said. I totally agree with what he said. If you are on the fence about the American Blackshirt Party or anything like that, I highly encourage you to go to our Facebook page and just interact with any of the posts there. Talk with some of the people we have on there. I myself was on the fence a long time before I finally joined the party. And I'm more than happy I did. Just the interactions I've had with all the members here is highly refreshing. It's very intellectually stimulating. It's really good. These are really good people. And I'm very thankful that I joined the party. So no, if you're really on the fence, I really recommend just talking with some of the people who are in the party, myself, anybody else. It will show you realistically where we are as a group. But more so what I wanted to talk about actually was just a quick touch on something we actually talked about before, and that is sort of the international angle of the fascist struggle that we all face. Every nation has a unique fascist struggle within themselves. We have a very unique one in the United States. We don't have a very deep history when it comes to fascism here. But that's sort of in the making now. We're sort of trailblazing that in a sense. But everybody has an independent way, and I think it's important for us to realize amongst each other is that we are not enemies of each other. Different fascist groups. Now we all have different views, different points about how we think on different issues. But we shouldn't just regard each other as enemies or inherently hostile to each other. We can have pride in our nations and focus exclusively on our nations when we need to, but to realize that we are all struggling against the same forces in that sense, the same ideas of liberal democracy and whatnot. I mean, it's not a photocopy issue of the United States to Germany, the United States to Britain and whatnot, but we are all facing sort of the same ideology in that sense. In some places it's worse. In some places they're dealing with a lot worse. So Britain is one of the big ones right now. They're dealing with an extremely haphazard government that is totally lackluster in almost every way, and we're seeing the rise of ideologies there, and hopefully that we'll see more groups that we can work with. And I think it's just really important to emphasize that if anybody who is not from the United States listens to this and is a fascist, again, the same thing, talk to us. I'd love to. I know I would love to hear about what you're going through in your struggles in your nation, and I'd be more than happy to tell you what we're going through in ours. I think it would show a lot, and it's a great way to refresh ideas between each other and to make it known that fascism is not xenophobic in that sense, but we are nationalist in that sense. We are about our nation, but we are also willing to acknowledge that the fascist struggle is a universal struggle, not inherently just my nation.
Thank you, Kenny. And so I hope you've enjoyed this podcast tonight, the Fascist Roundtable, and we will talk to you again real soon. Thank you very much.